Episode of Palmetto Politics. I am Shannon Grady, and this is my co-host.
John Cummings, good morning.
Folks, today we have a little bit to talk about that is specific to South Carolina, and then a lot to talk about that is in general about South Carolina. Because, look, I know we try to stay away from national topics, if you will, but given that we are looking at a presidential election, there really is no way to not talk some of the presidential politics that are taking place. And so I think it's only fair that since we're the first in the South and the Democrats have now moved it up, it just makes sense for us to talk about it. But before we jump into that, we are going to talk a little bit about the budget that passed in the state house and legislature, and a little bit of a brouhaha that got to going because South Carolina State Representative Heather Ammons Crawford upset not just the folks here in the Horry delegation, but obviously folks in the legislature in general. Now, Representative Crawford is not well liked by members of the legislature. I don't even know if she realizes that. But the scuttlebutt has been for quite some time that she is not well liked. I don't know. Were you aware of that?
I've heard rumblings, but nothing firsthand. So,
right. This is from legislatures, and of course, I'm not going to divulge my sources. But it is a plethora of individuals who do not like her.
She hasn't made any more friends, apparently. Yeah.
Right. Her personality is a little off-putting, is the way they kind of, in summary, the problem is I don't know exactly what it is that she's done. But I will say this, for those that aren't aware, there was carved out of the budget, there was about $13 million set aside to repair Highway 22. Now, if you've been on Highway 22 in the last couple of months, whatever weeks, years, whatever, you say, wait, repair it, what's wrong with it? Well, from appearances, it looks fine. But if you were here in 18, I think it was, when Hurricane Matthew created such a flood problem for the area, 22 was basically, it was great if you were square, Bob, what is it, SpongeBob SquarePants,
right,
and you didn't mind being underwater. Then the road was great, but the water was over top of $22 was set aside to elevate the road so that it would be passable, even if there were heavy floods. So the animus, I guess, John, started when Heather wanted to take some of that money. Trying to get some cats trying to attack my cords here. Wanted to take some of the money and revive the I-73. I don't even know what to call that. Debacle.
Dream.
The dream, yeah. The dream is still alive. And folks said, no, that's, even if it would be a thing 25, 30 years from now. I mean, it's nowhere near ready for that. It's not a shovel-ready job. So 22, on the other hand, is something that we currently use, and it's necessary to make sure, for a multitude of reasons, that road be repaired. Storms, because we just had one. I think it's gone down now. The tropical depression. It was a tropical storm, and I think it's gone back to a depression. But anyway, so that's kind of the situation there. So what do you think, John? Should we continue to try to carve out a niche for the possibility of I-70?
I've never really understood. One thing I've never understood about the I-73 project is I means interstate. Interstate means federal. Why the county has to throw in any money on a federal project is beyond me, especially when they keep telling us that they're passing these trillion-dollar infrastructure bills. Well, where's the money? Show us the money. It's our money. Actually, it's not our money. We're borrowing it from somebody. But if that project is a federal project, the county, my opinion, the county shouldn't be throwing money in anyway. And even if, like you said, tomorrow, magically, they wave the wand and they said, guess what? We're going to actually start this I-73 project. Well, it's going to take, no joke, it's going to take a long, long time. I'll say a decade, the way things federal projects go. It could take a decade. What are you going to do in the meantime? You still need 22. You still need it raised in case there is some flooding so we can get people out. So why would you even put the two together? You know what I mean? It shouldn't be mutually exclusive. If you really want a 73, you still need 22 fixed. And 22 it's a more practical, and it's obviously a quicker project than an interstate. And I don't understand the thought process there. And that, obviously that would really help the local population tremendously by raising 22. I know it would be a mess for a while, but
Yeah.
it's something that needs to be done on so many levels.
Yeah. 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 The idea that, if another big rainmaker comes into town, that we're going to be facing some flooding problems, to me is a little more daunting than, someone might make some money off of I-73 if it comes through, because that's really always been the contention. The problem being that so many people that are behind this drive to have I-73 also just, coincidentally happen to own much of the land where this I-73 would go through. I mean, I'm sure they're not related at all, John.
No,
Not
of
at all
course
related.
not.
No, no,
No,
not at
just a
all.
coincidence.
Total coincidence. But anyway, so that was kind of the exciting news, if you will. Now, on a positive, I did tell you last time that multiple states across the country have passed that, so that is good to hear that we are cracking down on this poison. So there are some good things that they
Yeah.
did this session, this half of the session in the legislature. So I'm happy to see some of those things were accomplished. Some things that didn't occur, again, we can kind of reiterate, we did not get constitutional carry is not a thing. Um, I I don't know how to handle that one, John. I'll be honest with you. I'm of two minds, and I think I've said this to you before. I absolutely think if the Constitution grants this power, which it clearly does, then the government nor no one that right, because it was a God-given right. The Constitution protects it. I said Constitution grants it. Let me take that back. God grants us the right to carry. The Constitution protects that right from an overbearing government. So if we take that into consideration, then every able-bodied, able-minded able to carry. But then we always seem to have the caveat, because even I think it. And I know you do too. And everybody that watches this is going to say, "Well, I know some people I wouldn't want them to carry because they're cuckoo." So, and I remember many times, and I know you can probably reflect back on this too. And I've even said it. There was carry, and I was like, "No, oh my God, there are teachers that I work with. I wouldn't want them to carry scissors, let alone a gun." So, how do you handle that, John? Do we just take there's going to be people that have a weapon that really shouldn't have a weapon, or do we kind of? I like the idea of people having a safety course like you do when you're driving a car or when you go fishing or anything else. You kind of have to go through the safety courses, get a hunting license, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
sort of like that conflicts with a constitutional carry, but I at the same time I'm thinking, my goodness, have you seen some of the people out there? I
Yeah.
don't think that'd be
I think with the constitutional carry, I agree with you on the fact that there should be some way to access through the internet some sort of safety class that you could continually click so they know that you're really there and know that
yeah,
you actually took the class. Just it's a basic fundamental class. I think everybody should take it anyway, and probably half of that video should be about safely storing and making sure
yeah,
that your firearm is a proper working order. I mean,
right. And your
safeties,
child's not gonna
locks, the
get it.
whole thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think everybody should go through that anyway. Now,
yeah,
my feelings have always been okay, pass the constitutional carry and have that in place just to, just access. And if people say, well, I don't have access to the internet, make sure that they can go to the library and do it, make sure that they can go to the whatever you need
right.
to have access, that you can get to that class and free of charge. And you're just going online and clicking. We've all gone through that to ad infinitum. We don't want to
Right.
even go through it, the process of doing that. But I think it's a good idea. But on top of that, at the state level, it's always
Yeah.
been my belief that I think that the states can have different rules regarding full carry. Full carry.
Right.
One of the surprises that I had when I moved down here from New York was that people who had full carry permits were prohibited from carrying guns in certain places. Now, up until a few years ago, when the People's Republic of New York changed hands, that was the case. If you had a full carry permit, you could carry your gun anywhere, and I
Yeah.
mean anywhere. Church, school, didn't matter. Other than going through security at the airport, you could carry your gun anywhere, concealed, 24/7. And I think that what states should do, at least at this state, if and when you get the constitutional carry, I think there should be an additional class that you can take
Mhm.
to acquire that type of permit, which would eliminate all of those safety zones, which I think are counterproductive completely. And I think if you have the training, you should be able to carry in those places. I think retired law enforcement shouldn't have to take the class. If you're retired military police, you shouldn't have to take the class because you've been through all of that. You know what the
Right.
situations are all about. So I think that there should be two levels, but
Mhm.
nobody should be denied other than the fact that they would be mentally ill. Now, there where you walk the line. If you get into that, the red flag laws.
Yeah.
I don't like the red flag laws because, again, you're creating a list. And anybody who has some animosity towards you can get you put on the list, and then you have to work yourself off the list. That's a major problem for me. That's why I disagree to anybody who believes in these red flag laws, is because it's the government putting people on lists and forcing them to get off the list. So you're guilty until proven innocent. And you're having a right taken away from you because somebody said, hey, he's a nut job. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, you're not in a job. They just have a problem with you, so they file complaints. We've all seen this in neighbor disputes. We've seen this in divorce disputes. We've seen this in custody disputes. People will come in and say things about someone that aren't true, and then you
Right.
have to fight, and you have to fight,
Yep.
and you have to fight. It can't be that way when it comes to possession of firearms because it's protected in the Bill of Rights.
I somebody else was talking about the very thing about where you come in and you make claims that somebody did this or that. One of the things I think we need to start doing is those individuals who make false claims need to have a heavy penalty.
Agreed.
It needs a minimum of what, I don't know, $1,000 fine, 30 days in jail kind of thing. Something that's gonna that people will be very reticent to make a false claim. So
Yeah, I mean, you're basically, what's the difference between that and filing a false affidavit? The answer is nothing.
yeah,
It's you're basically committing perjury until the point where you get into court and say it, and then you are committing perjury.
right.
But it's really a line that we have to figure out. It's almost like you watch the House of Representatives hearings, the Judiciary
Mhm.
Committee, and
Yeah.
you watch. Now everybody gets sworn in. Everybody puts their hands up and they
Mhm.
say, "I swear to tell the truth." Yeah, put your hand up. Except the people who are doing the questioning, who are the House members. They can lie all they want,
They can
right?
make
It's
stuff
so
up. Come
yeah,
on, John, they're not
well,
lying. They're
it's they
just
lie
tough
all they
questions.
want. But that's another thing that drives me crazy. They should
Yeah.
swear everybody in. But to
Yeah.
get back to the point where, if
Yeah.
you are committing what turns out to be perjury, yeah, you should be punished. And guess what? There's a whole lot of examples around here of people who walk into courts and lie and perjure themselves, and then people say, "Oh yeah, well that happens all the time." No, that's not the answer. That
Mhm.
is not the answer. Prosecution is the answer. If you put your hand on that Bible, you better tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I guess there's too many people around that don't take the Bible too seriously.
Yes. Well, let's jump over to some presidential politics as we're leading up to 2024 here. There were quite a few rallies across the state, and there have been various candidates for South Carolina. We talked last time about the fact that they pushed back our presidential primary till February 24th, which now allows essentially 2 weeks between the Nevada primary and the South Carolina primary. So that's 2 weeks that candidates will, oh my God, we're going to be inundated. So that's going to be an interesting recipe for who knows what here.
Yeah, and
But
moving that date made a tremendous amount of money. Is going to make a tremendous amount of money for local media,
oh,
a ton,
good
because you
gracious.
got an extra two
Yes.
weeks of advertisements at the federal
Yep.
level, and I'm telling you, that is just a landfall of money for people.
Yep. Yep. I'm not sure that I'll even be able to get my commercials on the air, even though
Yeah,
they're only
they're
15
gonna they're
seconds.
gonna they're gonna
Yeah.
price you out. You have to hope for something going on in some professional sports season that just I always tell this story. When I was running for Congress up in New York, we buying national time, a local spot during a national show was really expensive on
Yep.
the old over the air networks, CBS, ABC, whatever.
Mhm.
So I think the Jets were 1-9, right, in the NFL when I was running.
Oof.
One
Yeah.
and nine. They weren't off to a good start, whatever it was,
Right, right.
and
Yeah.
and they offered us time during the Jet game for 20% of what it would normally cost.
Wow.
20%. That was the only time we made a purchase like that to get on the Jet game. It was because they couldn't give it away. They was playing so poorly, nobody was watching.
I was like, nobody's watching anyway. Yeah. I will tell you, commercials are not in not went yesterday, and I was having
No,
a pedicure done, and I'm sitting there, and this is the first time I've actually seen my commercial on TV, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's my commercial. Okay. And she's like, oh, everybody's like, oh, that's you, and I'm like,
that's
oh, yeah, it's me,
that's
but
kind of strange,
that's my
right?
store.
It's kind of a
Don't focus
strange.
on me. It
It's
is, yeah.
it's strange. I remember years ago when I was doing basketball on the radio, they used to, if the men and the women played at the same time, they would put the women
Yeah.
on tape delay right after because they were on the same
Yeah.
time. We were on commercial radio. And so I would do the game and I would drive home and listen to myself doing the game in the car. That's just like, what
That's
the heck is
crazy.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. But yeah, so now what is your take on Joe Biden? Because now we talked a little bit about this before the show started. So Joe is he's his only competition right now on the Democratic side, folks, is Robert
Bobby
Kennedy.
Kennedy. Right.
And he's making some inroads. Um but I don't think they're not going to let him win. I mean, I mean, I hate to say this, folks, this is how I feel. I mean, God, that's such a bad attitude. And I'm still going to vote no matter what, but I'm disgusted, John. I just feel like the books are cooked. And I had a guy today kind of telling me, because I said, what I told you before is that I think they've already made the decision. Trump's guilty, and they probably already know how much time they're going to give him. I mean, I swear, I think they
Oh
already have
yeah,
that. He's
I'm
going to get
sure.
5 years. He's going to get 10 years, or whatever they're going to come up with. That's already baked into the cake. And so this guy told me, well, you need to stop watching. I'm like, dude, I couldn't. The last time I was in college, I mean, I never liked.
Or in the airport, or in the airport. Yeah.
Or yes, in the airport where you're, you have no
And
choice. But
they pay for that. They pay
yeah,
to be
yeah,
on
they
the air
pay
in the
for that
airport,
to be on
and
there.
now they're
Yeah,
not paying anymore because they don't have the money.
yeah. So I think and, and you
Yeah.
and I both that Joe will be the candidate, but I'm trying to think when LBJ decided not to run again. How far
Yeah.
along
That
was
was
he
like
when he
that was like
said that?
January. That was like January
Yeah,
of that year of '68.
yeah,
And basically that all came from popular support or lack thereof.
right.
Because what happened with Johnson, not to make this a history class, and I guess we
Yeah,
always do. What happened with Johnson was you had the conservatives who were in favor of the war, who were really, really upset about the fact that he just wouldn't go in and bury them. And then you had the anti-war movement on the other side who were disgusted with him because he was putting in 500,000-600,000 troops. So both sides were really disgusted with him. The right and the left, they were both disgusted with him. That's why you ended up with, three people running. Tragically, Bobby Kennedy Sr. was, he was
yeah,
assassinated. But then you ended up with Humphrey in there, who was just an extension of Johnson, which is what nobody wanted. And then you had George Wallace, who
yeah.
was the third guy in that election, and that's how Nixon ended up winning with only 40% not even 40% of the
Hmm.
popular vote.
Yep. Well, I totally agree with what Jeanette just said, is that we have to outvote the cheat. We've all got to vote, come what may. And I agree with her. I fully intend to vote, but and I think here in South Carolina we'll be okay. But it's the states like Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Georgia that I'm
Pennsylvania,
deeply, Pennsylvania that
Pennsylvania.
yeah, especially Pennsylvania. I'm deeply concerned about those. I just don't know that that's going to be a thing. Um,
My thing is, I don't know if we can outvote the computerized cheating. I mean,
yes,
the people with the
yes,
ballots, with the absentee ballots, yeah, I think we can. We can
yeah.
mobilize people, and we can get out there and do what we used to call the absentee ballots, but the mail-in votes. Could we do that? Yeah, but the computers, I just don't trust them. I mean, the world's upside down. You know how upside down the world is? The Democrats are fighting to keep a Kennedy off the ballot.
I know.
I mean,
That's
does it get any more
insane.
does it get
Oh
any
my
more upside
God.
down than that? And
Yeah,
that's because, quite honestly, and he said this, not me. He's a
yeah,
Kennedy Democrat. That's what
yeah,
he is.
yes,
He's a liberal, like his father was. His father was far more liberal than his uncle,
yeah.
John, who was the president.
Oh yeah,
He's a liberal like his father was, but he's also very anti big government when it comes to the merger between government and corporate America and really the world corporations. That's what disgusts him. And that's why
mhm,
they don't want to give him any air or airtime. They don't want people to hear what his message is, because his message is broad. It's a populist message. Now, he's a populist. He's on the left. Trump is really a populist. He's on the right. So
mhm.
Biden's trying to find the middle. Me personally, and I'll say this here, I don't think Biden's going to make it to Labor Day. in the presidency. I really don't.
Yeah.
These documents that are coming out, and I mean, we've seen a sliver
Yeah.
of what's there, and
Right.
people are ready to run them out. And
Yes.
believe me, there's so much more coming that they're going to have to figure out a way to get him out as cleanly as possible. I mean, by they, it's the Democrats. The
Right.
Democrats have to get rid of him. Republicans aren't going to get rid of him. They're
No,
not going to have the
absolutely not.
time. They're not going to have, and he's not going to stand. I think they're either going to have to 25th Amendment him,
Hmm.
or they're going to have to tell him, lean on him to get him to resign. Say, look, you got your money, get out.
Well, my
Otherwise,
suspicion is they don't want him to, the specter of Kamala Harris, President Harris, is horrifying. So what I think they'll do is they'll LBJ him, be like, you are not running again. LBJ finished out his term and did not
right.
seek reelection. That's what I think the Democrats will do. I think they'll push him to, um, just say, this is it. I'm just going to serve this one term and I'm out, because they don't want to put Kamala Harris into the White House as president. That's my take on it. Now they may say to him, if you do not accept these options, then we will have to do the 25th Amendment,
Yeah,
or we
yeah,
will not a hunter. So
yeah. And I don't know if he's gonna make it though. I mean, just
well,
mentally, you
physically,
see
yeah,
his capacity is just it gets worse day by day.
God
And
save
it
the
gets to
Queen.
it gets to the point where, I mean, how much longer can you cover this? I know the media is basically the communications arm of the Democrat Party, but how much longer can you go on with this? You can't put him on the world stage anymore. You never could put Vice President Harris on the world stage. She just doesn't
Oh
have
my God,
the
she's
political
an idiot.
acumen to do that. And
Embarrassing.
so I don't know exactly where they are. And then, of course, they have to come up with somebody who is in the wings. Everybody says Gavin Newsom. Well, you know what? You can't point to his work in
Yeah.
California as the governor because it's a disaster. You can look to Michelle Obama, but of course, all the corruption that happened with the Bidens seems to have happened when he was vice president for
Yeah.
President Obama. And here's the other kicker: the further you get down into this, who's at the top of all of this ultimately? I mean, I know that Joe is the big guy in some 10% for the big guy in some of those conversations, but I think there's a bigger guy. All of these orders came from somewhere, to crossfire hurricane. Who initiated that? Who initiated the spying on Trump's campaign? Who initiated all of that? And Trump was very clear in the beginning. He said it was Obama. But
Right.
if they keep digging and they find that, well, that closes them out. And then where are you? Back to Mayor Pete? I mean, Mayor Pete, he couldn't win dog catcher.
No, I'm just curious as to who they are going to come up with. I'm trying to think of who has even a spot of hope.
Yeah, I know. And look, they have a thin bench. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Bernie would probably try to come back, and
Right.
Bernie missed his chances, and now Bernie's
Yes.
80 or 82, 83. And I know he's certainly in a lot better
Yeah.
mental shape than
Right.
Biden. But well, you can have a conversation with Bernie. I mean, Bernie's
Right.
Bernie. He doesn't change. And if you watch him, he's just Larry David. It's the same guy. I've never seen the two guys in the same place at the same time. But yeah, their bench is thin. I mean, do you go to Whitmer? That's who they like to sell, Governor Whitmer of Michigan. That's a possibility. But where do you see anybody that has the ability to stand up there on a stage and take on whoever the Republican nominee is? I mean, especially against President Trump. We all know that it's gloves off when he's in the debate. So if you can't take that, good luck.
I mean, I'm like scrolling through the state governors right now. So obviously, Katie Hobbs is a no.
Oh my gosh. They talk
Gavin
about
Newsom is a no. Jared Paulus,
yeah,
he is the
he's
governor of
Colorado.
Colorado.
You know what? He's a possible guy. He's pretty popular out there.
We got Ned Lamont out from Connecticut.
Yeah, that's not happening.
John Carney from Delaware. Oh, come on, there you go, Delaware, Biden's
please.
hometown.
Delaware costs you 4 miles in tolls to use 95 in Delaware, and it's 12 miles.
Josh Green from Hawaii. I don't think he's going to get it. JB Pritzker.
Yeah, Pritzker. Well, the thing about
Illinois.
Pritzker's an interesting guy because Pritzker is very hard left, but he's a billionaire. So if he got into it, it's endless money. And he's a guy who's always tried to keep himself right in the middle of, although he's a guy that actually, shut down Illinois during the COVID pandemic and then went to Florida and hung out in his house.
Here's a name, Andy Bashir,
Yeah.
Kentucky.
Although,
Laura Kelly,
right.
female out of Kansas.
Yeah, they don't have much of a bench. They really don't. I mean, I'm sure that, like I said, I'm sure they're going to try to put Michelle Obama's name out there or whoever, but I mean, I'm sure they could try to, clean up Newsom. And I don't mean clean up. Obviously, he's the neatest guy on TV when it comes to the way he dresses. But what's going on in California and what has gone on in California is a socialist mess. So I don't know if you could sell that on the national level. He looks the part. Again, if you called up Central Casting and said, "Hey, send me a presidential candidate for the Democrat Party," it was a casting call, they'd send you Governor Newsom. I don't think there's any doubt. He looks the part, but he's not the part.
Michelle Grisham out of Mexico. I'm just looking at that, literally looking at who looks the part. Kathy, was it Hochul?
Hochul, she's the one from New York. She is a nightmare. And she probably lost, my opinion, to Lee Zeldin for all the shenanigans in New York.
Roy they have Cooper's some prime in North Carolina. I just don't think he's the guy. We have a lot of female. And I don't know if Tina Kotek from Oregon. I'm not going to assume her pronoun because.
Well, in Oregon too. Oregon's one of those places where you have significant portions of the state that are looking to secede. They're looking to become Greater Idaho. There are.
Oh, we got Josh. We got Josh Shapiro. What am I thinking?
Oh, that's his dream. But Pennsylvania again. Pennsylvania is a mess. I mean, Philadelphia is a mess.
Get that state. And how is that it? Is that all the options?
Maybe I'm being
Tony
naive.
Evers.
Yeah, maybe I'm being naive because your ability to govern when it comes down to some of these elections, it matters to nobody. They just want to see who you are and they want to hear you. They don't want to listen to what happened to your state since you became the governor, right?
Right.
I mean, he was the attorney general before that, and they didn't handle the pandemic particularly well there. Although it did produce Dr. Richard Levine. That's where he came out of, Pennsylvania. He was the head of Health and Human Services in Pennsylvania. Nothing screams healthy like an overweight, obese crossdresser. So.
Exactly. Ooh, yeah. All right. So let's jump into the four. Talk a little bit about the plural. I think we all will agree the New York indictment by Bragg is not even relevant to talk about. It's stupid. Have they indicted him in Georgia yet? They haven't yet.
No.
Okay.
And that's another one. I try to go by Alan Dershowitz. Because Alan Dershowitz, he's a liberal. He's a liberal. I mean, he's the biggest liberal there is, and I give him a lot of credit. He comes on TV. He says, "Look, I voted for Biden. I wouldn't vote for Trump. There's no way I'm voting for Trump. But when it comes to the Constitution, all of this is bogus." And he'll tell you that, So I mean, that's an interesting barometer. I never thought I would be alive to see the day where I'm using Alan Dershowitz as the barometer of sanity. But like I said, you're in a world where the Democrats are trying to keep a Kennedy off the board.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's upside down. So, well, I agree. So I think the New York and the Georgia, there's no there. They don't have any legs. And I think the document, I don't know what's Trump calling it, the box scandal.
Boxgate.
He's calling it the Boxgate. Honestly, we agree on this too. There's no there either, but that's where they are going to put his neck, and already made the decision. Yeah. I don't know how they don't. I think they're going to get him. I think. Well, now, folks, please understand. I'm not saying the man's guilty. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm saying they're going to find him guilty, and they're going to put him in jail.
Well, they're going to try, and then I guarantee you, if they did that, he'd win. He'd probably win with 70% of the vote. The people they've had it, John. They've had it with the nonsense.
I think he'll win the primary. I don't think he'll win the general. I really don't.
I don't think anything is going to happen until after the election. I really don't.
No,
they'll just
they've
keep.
already said they're going to have this done before the election. That's one of
Well,
the things.
the one
That's, you know,
the one thing
speedy
about
trial.
that particular, the confidential information, whatever,
Yeah,
classified
crap.
information.
It's
The
crap.
one thing they have in their quiver,
Yeah,
the Trump defense team, is the case that they call the underwear drawer case, of all things to have President Clinton referred to as underwear drawer case. But he had all of those audio tapes that were confidential, classified audio tapes in his sock drawer long after he left the White House. And it went to
that
court,
was
and
safe.
they said absolutely he's allowed to have it because he was the president. And it didn't matter that it was in his sock drawer. The fact that Trump had all his stuff locked up, it doesn't matter. And here's the difference. That's the one thing that the media does extremely, extremely well, is that they try to equate, in this case, Trump's case of having classified documents with Hillary's, Biden's, Mike Pence. Now, what was the outlier there? Well, Trump is,
Yeah,
because he was the
yeah. None
president.
of
He
them.
could
Yeah,
declassify
he's
anything he
president
wants. The other
at
three
the time.
people
None of
were
them were.
not.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
not. And Biden has stuff from 40 years ago. He had, like
Right.
Trump makes the case, he has
Yep.
it all over the country. He has them in
Yep.
Chinatown of all places. That's a great
Right.
irony. Has it in Chinatown in D.C. He has some at the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Pennsylvania got hundreds of millions of dollars from the CCP. I mean, it's endless stuff. And I wonder just how much longer can they go pushing this narrative, trying to get Trump, when the Biden House of Cards is collapsing. And I mean collapsing. When you see in one story on the
Yeah.
news, and they're trying to keep this out of the news, the fact that they're just from this incident with the Chinese, there may have been $20 million. $20 million. And then you talk about the other $5 million. And then you still have Tony Bobolinsky that they didn't deal with. And then you have all the stuff from Romania and Louis Freeh that they didn't deal with, that I've talked about before on here.
I think he's the most corrupt politician in our
Oh,
history.
It's not even
Bar none.
arguable. Not even arguable. Not the amount
And
the amount of
John and
money
I are both history teachers. Yeah.
the amount of money. I mean, if you go back, and even if you look at what Benedict Arnold got, it's like it's like a pittance.
The graft of Taft.
Even oh man, and this guy just
Yeah.
it's the most bothersome point for me as someone who's in law enforcement is that our federal law enforcement agencies, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Attorney General, they had this information in December of 2019 and sat on it.
Yep.
That's what we should be outraged about.
Yep. Oh,
They took that election from the American people. That's what they did. That's election interference. You can scream all you want about the machines, about mail-in ballots, about absentee ballot, whatever it is. You can scream about that. We can argue about that all day. You cannot argue the fact that the federal government, through the Department of Justice, interfered in that election and gave it to Joe Biden. It's not an arguable point. It's a fact that if all of that information would have been released, there is no way that Joe Biden would have been president. And who knows? I mean, if they would have released it at the right time, he probably wouldn't have been the nominee.
Yeah. So let me using that very point that you just made, let me further illustrate why I am contending that, and he will be in prison because of everything you just said. Now, who was president when all of that happened? When the FBI was doing all their cheating and covering up for Biden?
Yeah, Trump.
Okay, so Trump was in.
That's the deep state.
The deep state was able to fake him out, whatever. Do you think they're doing with Biden in office? Man, they got free reign. They're going to do whatever. I'm telling you, I agree with you in principle. This is all garbage. But here's what they're going to get him on. They're not going to get him. I mean, it's part of the reason they're going to get him. The whole, well, you didn't turn over the box documents when what was it? Asked for them.
Yeah, it's the archives.
Yeah, the archives.
It's the
when
National
the archives
Archives.
asked for,
And that was a negotiation. They were negotiating the whole time.
Agreed. So here's what they're going to get him on. They're not going to get him on the fact that he had classified documents. Because look, I mean, how many times we got to say, God, Joe Biden had him in his freaking garage with his Corvette, and many other places, Chinatown, etc. Where they're going to get him is they're going to say, okay, if you had documents that you believed you had the right to have, then why did you hide certain documents from your attorneys if you didn't think it shouldn't have been in your possession? That's where they get him with obstruction, and he goes to jail.
Well, the other problem with this, and nobody ever talks about this, is that the documents that President Trump has are copies. They're copies.
Yeah.
So who has the originals? The National Archives? Who has them? So if the archives already had them, or if the White House office had them, where's the problem? You already
Well,
had
some
them.
of them were copies, some of them weren't like that. The letter, the written on the napkin, and the news.
Well,
And I don't even understand, how
napkins.
can
Yeah,
a news magazine be a
yeah.
top secret anyhow? What the hell?
I agree with you. I think they're going to do
Almost to the
everything that they
public.
can. They're going to do everything that they can to keep him
The
out.
devil.
And
Just don't
my
want
thing
people to
is
be surprised when he goes to jail and he
the
doesn't
fact
win, because they're
that
not going to let this guy win.
the fact that they're trying so hard, and it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
The fact that they're
Yeah.
trying so hard should tell everybody that he has been over the target the entire time, and that
Yeah.
justice in this country is dead. The justice system at the federal level is a local level. It depends on the state and the city and the county or wherever. But at the federal level, right now, our justice system, the rule of law, is dead. It's
I
dead.
just want to know, what
Montesquieu,
do we do?
the law shall be like death, which spares no one. That's what Montesquieu said. And right now, they're just picking and choosing, and that's the most dangerous place we could be as a country. And I think eventually, it's going to come. We've said this from the beginning. It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well.
Yes.
They will keep pushing until we, the people, get aggressive. It's just a matter of time. It's going to happen.
That's what I was going to ask you. So what happens when we all go vote? How long do you think it'll take to count the votes this time?
I think it really depends on what the states do. I mean, you have some states that are getting rid of machines, which I think is great. I wish somebody would do that here, but who knows? They'll just keep counting votes until the Democrats win. I mean, it's going to be really hard to outvote the cheat, like Jeanette said. And the thing I'm worried about are the computers. I am not worried about being able to get out there and ballot harvest legitimate votes. Make sure people get to the polls, go to these assisted living facilities, and go in there and canvass and see who's actually able to vote. And you can do that, and you might be able to do it as well as the Democrats. Although I don't think the money's going to be there for sure to hire the people to get them out there to do it. That's the difference. Is the Republicans want volunteers and the Democrats pay.
Well, let me just
have
ask you this
billionaires
question.
with deep pockets, and they pay people to go out and get votes.
The election is Tuesday, November 5th. So what happens on, let's just go crazy and say they managed to count the votes in one night, which would be different from last time. So let's say that, they, and so Wednesday, November 6th, it is some Democrat. I don't know who it's going to be, because I think you and I both agree it ain't going to be Joe Biden, but let's just some Democrat. What you folks going to do? What are people willing to do when we don't have a Republican president? It's clear that dead people voted, and incompetent, I don't want to say incompetent, mentally incompetent people voted from the nursing homes. And we have more of the 2,000 mules situation and computer questions. And we basically have a repeat of times 10. What you folks going to do? That's what I want to know. What are people going to do?
I think that, we're getting into, issues here that we don't know are going to happen or not. But I think that if we
I'm
get
hypothetically saying, what you doing?
Yeah,
That happens.
If Trump is in this election and Trump is in jail or at least out on bail or whatever, I think that the Republican response, I don't mean the organized Republicans, I mean the grassroots people.
Right.
I think they're going to be at polling places by the thousands, not to vote. They're going to surround the places. I'm not kidding. I really think that. I think that's the only way that people feel that they can have an effect, is to surround these places and make sure that no nonsense goes on. That you're not walking in with buckets of ballots. That none of this is. I mean, but the biggest problem that we face is, even if you catch people, what are they going to do? What's the federal government going to do? They're going to do nothing, and they're going to destroy this country in the process. I mean, all you had to do was watch the Carrie Lake fiasco out in Arizona. They had videos of people messing with the machines after the fact that they were already calibrated. You had videos of trucks with ballots going into a place never to be seen again. There was video evidence from everywhere, every angle, and they said, "Oh, no, that's just it." And they try to explain it away. And of course, right, and because there's no judge, or there are no judges that have the temerity, the chops, they won't stand up and say, "Oh, this is ridiculous." They won't do it. They're all they either have material on it to blackmail them, or they're just afraid of being completely canceled and run out of their livelihood.
Yeah, and that's why God, I wish I weren't to this point, John. I really do.
Oh, I never thought we'd be at this point ever.
But I want people to be prepared. I do not want. I feel like a lot of folks, myself included in this, I thought Trump's going to kick the crap out of Joe Biden. It's not going to be a competition. You know what I mean?
But,
And when the
he did.
first thing, well, yeah, right. Well, okay.
I think he did.
But I'm saying when they shut, I was like, what?
No.
That's never happened.
Yeah,
What is this
in
nonsense?
how many states?
And I said then, oh, well, they cooked the books. And I'm like, how the heck does this happen? And he's the president. Well, what can he do? So I just want people to be aware. Don't get caught. Be prepared for this.
Yeah, and I think we have to throw some of this on the Supreme Court.
Volunteers. They have paid mercenaries. That's what I call them.
Oh yeah, I think we need to throw some of this on the Supreme Court too, because
there
were multiple states. It clearly states in the Constitution that state legislatures are in charge of elections, whether they're federal or not, state or federal.
And they violated their own Constitution.
What happened was, you had governors go out with these executive orders under the auspices of the COVID emergency and saying, we're going to change election law. And in those states, those elections were conducted under laws which were passed illegally, weren't even passed. They're unconstitutional.
Right. Yeah, they're unconstitutional.
And all these federal courts, including the Supreme Court, kept saying, well, you don't have standing. What do you mean you don't have standing? Anybody who voted in that election should have standing in those states because your vote was canceled by a governor who did not have the power to cancel your vote. So, the whole system failed us. The judicial branch failed us, the legislative branch failed us, and the executive branch failed us. And especially the justice system. They just completely.
So tell me again how that doesn't happen. How that doesn't repeat itself in 24. Please share with me how that doesn't happen.
Might. I think we'll know by September what's going to happen. I think a lot of that's going to have to. What are they going to do with Biden? That's not my thing. Then they have to figure out their way around that.
Where's my ice cream?
They're going to figure out his way around it.
I think I peed myself.
He's toast. I mean, he's just toast. I mean, I hate to say it, but you watch him, he's worse and worse, and that doesn't get any better. We've all been through that with our families. At least I think everybody has at least once. And it's not pretty. And I don't know how they get him to do the things that he does on a daily basis. But boy, the last couple of times out, he's just been saying stuff that is off the hook. He's off the hook. It's not. Yeah. It's not like when, even when Reagan, they said he might have been starting with the, at the end and everything. But even he was like listening to people and having conversations on the phone with the Soviets on the phone. Yeah. He was okay. He was, might have been a little slipping, a little slowed down.
His problem was his memory. He didn't remember things. Yeah. He didn't say stupid stuff.
Right.
But, and just we put that out there. This is not a new thing. It's just that it's now like multiplied by 100. And all he says is stupid stuff. And it's not even coherent. It's garbled English. You're like, what the God was that a word that he just said?
It's really amazing. And you know what too, when you watch that, especially with that disease, and that's what dementia is, and that's what he has, or Alzheimer's or both.
Right.
It progresses differently for everybody. And there are people that are 60 that are in the same boat he's in right now. And yet there are people that are 90 that are sharp as a tack. So, this is not, for me, it's not an age issue. You're not saying, he's being discriminatory against because he's old. No, I don't think he's capable. And I never thought he was capable, but he's not capable now.
I can't remember the name of the gentleman that was on, but he was on Glenn Beck's show. And of course, it was a podcast and I wasn't watching, I was listening. So, and they're having this, bantering back and forth, and it probably went on. Very on point, excellent speaker. And then Glenn wraps up the conversation. He goes, hey, Stu, how old do you think? Can't think of his name. How do you think he is? And he goes, I don't know, 70. He's 89. I'm like,
right.
89. Holy cow. Oh, it was
like when you watch Chuck Grassley. I mean, Chuck
Yeah,
Grassley from Iowa. I mean,
Thomas Sowell.
he's
Yeah,
well into his
yeah,
80s, Chuck
yeah,
Grassley. And you
yeah,
see him up there. I mean, he's a little slower, but boy,
yep,
he's sharp as a tack and he works
yeah,
hard. And if you ever see the video on him, he runs in the morning at 4:30. He's 89. I mean,
yeah,
or whatever he
yep.
is. But
So
yeah,
yeah.
it's not an age issue for me. And the
Mhm.
one thing about the Democrat primary that's so interesting, here in South Carolina, is that they moved the Democrat primary to be the first one. Whereas it used to be the Iowa caucus or as Rush Limbaugh used to say, the Hawkeye caucus, the Iowa caucuses and then the New Hampshire primary were the big thing.
Yeah.
And they had to move them out of there. They couldn't be first. And they pointed to the issue of race. That's
Mhm.
what they did. They pointed to the issue of
Mhm.
race and said it's not Iowa, New Hampshire, not reflective of the general
Oh, they're too
population.
white.
Right, right. But the real issue is that they know that Biden's not going. He wouldn't win in New
No,
Hampshire.
no.
They know he wouldn't win. He's not going to beat Bob. I'm
Kennedy's
sorry.
gonna
He's not going
win.
to beat Bobby Kennedy in New Hampshire. That's a
Yeah,
Massachusetts thing.
yeah,
And he probably wouldn't win in Iowa either because the one thing that's most important about Iowa and New Hampshire that I love about the process is that you have to go to those places and you have to work the room. You have to shake hands.
yes,
They have a lot of straw polls and you have to show up at events. And I went to one back in 2011 with Thaddeus McCotter. It was great. It was a Republican one, but they do the same thing with the Democrats. They have straw polls and you come out and you go out to a fair, like a fairgrounds, and it's
right.
like every candidate has a booth and you go
Yep.
out and you work the crowd and you really engage with the people and people really get to see what you're about. Joe Biden can't do that.
No,
So they had
in
to get
fact,
him
when he
out.
was
They had to,
doing
they had to shut down. Yeah, he was terrible at it. He'd get
what
in
what
trouble,
little bit
snipping
he
people
did
and whatever.
in for the 2020, he would get mad. Remember how he would get angry at people? They
Yeah,
ask him, he'd get really mad and basically threaten to take you behind
yeah,
the what was it? Take you behind the stadium. Oh, he was threatening to beat up everybody. And it was like
right.
that was
So
4 years
it
ago.
doesn't work.
Holy cow. He's
So
bad.
yeah, so how do we get around that? We get around it by putting the first primary in South Carolina and using race as the issue to do it. But the issue
Yeah.
was you don't want your flag bearer. I don't think it's going to be him anyway. But you don't want your flag bearer coming out 0 for 2 out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, so folks, it's interesting. If anybody has any suggestions or ideas on who they think the Democratic nominee will be, or not nominee, the eventual candidate, I don't know if nominee. I don't think he'll make it. I'm just like I
Yeah,
don't. Every day
he's
I
not going to be
expect to
the
hear
guy.
he's had a stroke or something because he's not doing well.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that with hope in my heart. I'm not.
right.
I don't
No,
wish that, but I'm just saying it won't surprise me if they come out and say, "Well, the president's had a stroke and he's incapacitated," and which would be devastating because, folks, President Harris is frightening. Frightening.
well, I guess the quiet. I'll say the quiet part out loud here. She's not going to be the president anyway. Just like Joe's not the president. It's a
Right.
group of people
Well,
behind them that are running the show.
clear.
He's not
Absolutely, yes.
capable, and she's incapable anyway.
Well, see, and that's the thing. I mean, I know he's not capable, but I also think because I better not say that, I'm going to get in trouble. I think
Yeah.
that he understands he is a figurehead and that the other folks are running the show. Whereas I think Harris actually believes that she's legitimately the vice president and she has this authority. And so I don't know if she would play along with the game as
Uh, yeah.
easily. I think she might try to throw whatever bona fides she thinks she has. Well, I'm the president. They're gonna be
Well,
like, no, you're really not.
they could take care of that monetarily, I think.
Probably,
And,
yes,
and I
yes,
would think that if she became the president, well, then guess what? She's going to have to run in the primary to try to be the president again,
clobbered.
even though she only got 5% in her home state of California when they had the California primary.
Did she
It's
get
not
that much? I
particularly,
didn't think it was that
not
much.
particularly, not well in your home state. You should do a little better than 5%.
Yeah, I
Even
didn't think she got that. I swear I thought it was 1%. I'm not
I
kidding.
think
I thought she
I
was
think
terrible.
even Walter Mondale won Minnesota. I think against Reagan, right? So I mean, even the blind squirrel catches
Yeah,
a nut sometimes, right?
every night. Yeah. So but it's going to be really interesting. The next couple of weeks
Yeah,
are
and
going to be telling.
the other problem is Congress is supposed to recess.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
supposed to recess, and there are people. I heard Matt Gaetz say, you know what, we shouldn't be going anywhere. He said we should work right through August. He said there is far too much going on right now at so many different levels, on the
yeah,
world level, on the local level, every level, that we need to stay. now part of me is like, well, don't stay because you do more damage when you're in Washington when you're not.
That's true.
But
That's true.
there are things that need to be
Yeah.
addressed, and to just let it go because you have to go to the beach or wherever,
Yeah. Yeah.
not why
Well,
we
I
pay
thought
you. And
James
I
Comer
think
made a
serious
good point
people,
when he didn't want that special committee to do any investigation of Biden. He was like, no, 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 well, no, we don't want that. We want to stay in control of it because the Department of Justice is freaking worthless. They're definitely cheaters and liars and
well,
um, AG
Merrick Garland,
Garland is
the
a
AG. I mean, I think
dirtbag.
it's quite obvious, and people have made this allegation that he perjured himself multiple times
Yeah.
in front of Congress, multiple times. And I
Mhm.
know I've said this previously. Roger Clemens almost went to jail because he perjured himself about
Yeah.
taking steroids in baseball. This guy is
Well, here's the
lying about
catch.
national
Who would
security.
actually have to who would actually have to press charges against him for perjuring himself?
Yeah,
Anybody want to
him.
guess? Anybody? Him.
Yeah,
Like,
so they'll do
I
whatever
found
they want.
myself innocent.
I would think that there has to be some
There
constitutional
needs to
way.
be.
There has to be
Yeah.
some constitutional way around that.
There has to be,
And,
John. I'm
and
with
my
you.
my only my only thought is that they
A
would
sergeant
need
at arms.
no, they need the constitutional sheriffs. The
Yeah,
sheriffs are the only people that constitutionally have power, but then
that's true.
you'd be going up
Good
against the
point.
FBI. But if you
Mm,
show up and if
mm.
you could find a reason that these people violated the Constitution, you could find a court that will draw up
There's the other
the proper
kick.
points that you could arrest somebody. But it would take a lot of chops to have the sheriffs go up against the FBI and going up to Merrick Garland and saying, "Hey, you're under arrest." It's going to be a nice little scrum there. But
Well,
hey,
what about
I don't.
marshals? A U.S.
I'm out of
Marshal.
choices. Yeah,
Could a U.S. Marshal do it?
I don't know because I think the marshals were created, right? The sheriffs have a constitutional role. They're the only ones, right, as far as
Yeah.
law enforcement.
Well, because I'm thinking they have a constitutional authority. It's within whatever state they're in. So, for example, a
Right.
sheriff's deputy from South Carolina can't go arrest somebody in North Carolina, Florida, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the odds of
Well, if any of these people that we're speaking of in the
yeah.
Justice Department or any office holder or anything, if they covered up or lied to
Hmm.
Congress, and what they were lying about is bank records,
Yep.
etc., and those bank
Yep.
records have a state issue to them, meaning that these are state banks, not federal banks, right? They're
Right.
chartered by states. Those attorneys general, and we talked about this before, at the state level
State
can
level.
prosecute.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
could prosecute because look, you just lied to Congress about
Hmm.
something that happened in our state, and we're having trouble getting to the bottom of this because you just obstructed justice. I mean, that's probably the only way they can go. I've said this before. I think the state
Yeah.
attorneys general need to get on this with these bank records. You need to find where the money is, where it was, what
Hmm.
states it passed through, where the ghost companies were. I know that's a lot of it has to do with Delaware because
Right.
they're very lax laws, which is why every credit card company is in Delaware. But I think that's the only way we could go. Our federal justice system is dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's dead right now.
Yeah.
Nobody who's prosecuting anybody. Nobody.
That's the whole thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I know I'm frustrated. And I know American citizens at large are frustrated. Every show I've watched, you know, listen to Glenn Beck, listen to Joe Rogan. It doesn't matter. Listen to trigonometry. It doesn't matter who you listen to. The people talking about what's happening here in the United States say the same thing. Nobody's going to get prosecuted. Nobody ever gets prosecuted. You know, I mean,
Except Republicans.
except for Republicans,
Trump.
exactly. And yeah,
And it's not even, it's not, I shouldn't say that. It's not even Republicans.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really America First people because
right,
there's plenty of Republicans that are in on this. I'm not going to give them a pass.
yeah, yeah. The Uniparty.
It's a mirror of what goes on in Colombia.
Hmm.
That you have that middle group there that says they're Republicans, but they're interested in one thing, and that's holding on to power. And there's way too much of that going on in Washington. I mean, the fact that you have 20 people in the Freedom Caucus in Washington and maybe 20
Yep.
people here. I mean, that to me, those are the real patriotic Americans who see what the issue is and see that it has to be dealt with on so many levels. But the rest of them, they just want to go along to get along because they like where they are, they like the power, and obviously it's become quite lucrative for everybody.
Yeah, money buys you a lot of favors, and people look the other way, and judges look the other way. And here in South Carolina, as we talked about many, many times, the judges get appointed by state legislatures who themselves are attorneys. So a lot of palms that are getting greased here, there, and yonder. And they actually just came out with David Pascal, who we're hoping to have on the show at some point in time. We can work it out in his schedule. It has talked about vote buying, and that's illegal. That is illegal. Now it remains to be seen. We're going to see folks going to jail. That ought to be happening.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, but at least it's being uncovered. And David Pascal is a Democrat, so we have a Republican supermajority. So the one benefit is he doesn't have the Republican Party trying to quash him, and it helps him, if you will, to go after the Republican Party. So, but in this instance, I don't think he's doing it out of a partisan position. He's doing it because it's just wrong what's happening. But and John Gallman has covered this extensively. But what we see here at the local level and state level is amplified at the federal level for sure, in terms of corrupt courts and judges. And that's why I agree with you. It's so frustrating to hear. I think initially, back in 2020, they said, "Oh, well, it's too soon. You can't bring the court. It's too soon. Nothing's happened yet." And then so they waited until after it happened, and they tried again. Oh, well, now it's too late. Well, they can't extend the vote or whatever because it's not constitutional. The court said, "Oh, well, but they haven't done it yet, so you can't bring this before the court because it hasn't been done yet." And then so after they did it, then the court said, "Oh, well, now it's too late. They've done it." So no matter which way you went, they found some way to not hear who has argued that the cases all got defeated in court. You're a liar, and the truth isn't in you, because those cases never got into court because the judges didn't want to have to rule on it. So they just either said that it lacked standing, or they just refused to hear it, period, full stop.
Yeah. And, I think the foundation of all of this is what John Adams said about the Constitution, that it was made for a moral and religious people.
Yes.
And it's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. We have far too many immoral, non-religious people in places of power. There shouldn't be places of power. There should be representative government. But look, it's places of power. We have far too many people that don't care about. They don't believe in the wrath of God. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in morality. They're not religious. They're not going to do something because it's the right thing to do. We've turned into a country of what's in it for me.
Yeah.
And that's at the foundation of all of this, of all of it. The fact that you'll get up, put your hand on the Bible and lie. And boy, when I was a kid, if you thought about doing that and you lied with your hand on the Bible, you'd think that bolt of lightning was going to come down, strike you dead right where you stood. Now, people have no fear because they don't believe in a higher power. They just don't. They believe that they're the higher power, or they believe that the government is the higher power. They don't answer to anybody but themselves. Right. And that's the great danger. This Constitution, our Constitution, no longer works for far too many people because they have no morals. They'll do anything to get power, to keep power, and to make sure they keep padding their wallets.
Yep, I would agree. Well, that's really about all I've got for today. I just I want to feel upbeat. I want to feel hopeful.
That's tough.
It is, and that's why I tell people, look, just be prepared. Be prepared to see Trump arrested and jailed, and found guilty. He's been arrested essentially, tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison. And you're absolutely right. That doesn't mean he can't continue to run. I just don't believe under any circumstances they will. I even said it. I said he'll be Epstein before they allow him to be president again.
I think the one risk that they take about continue to pushing this, and I've said this from the beginning, I thought the Democrats, probably their best strategy, the Democrats and the Republicans, the whole deep state, I think they would have been best served if they had just left Trump alone, just left him alone, because all they keep doing is giving him more and more and more publicity. And the average American person, we're not stupid, and we're going to look at this and say, hey, wait a minute. They're going to arrest this guy and put him in jail for some papers that he may or may not have that he shouldn't have had, compared to the president of the United States, when he was vice president of the United States, taking tens of millions of dollars, and you're not putting this guy away.
Yeah.
People are gonna look at it and say, and I told you, I just think it pushes it. Trump's poll numbers go up, and I haven't gone down yet.
Yeah.
Haven't gone down yet. I mean, he was really down there in the 30s until they started indicting him, and now some polls he's up in the 60s. I mean,
here's what I'll say.
It doesn't look like a good plan.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I think his numbers was stellar back in 2020. I mean, I think he had great numbers then. Didn't help him, and
No, well,
because we couldn't overcome the cheat. So it may be is the spark that igniting. It may be this is the moment when people decided it's time to water the tree of liberty. I don't know. I'm not calling for that. I'm just saying I don't know how we continue down this road pretending like everything is normal when it is not normal.
No, yeah.
Presidents to be indicted and multiple times. Nothing is normal that's happening right now. Men pretending to be women is not normal. Men competing against women in sports, it's not normal. I don't know how much more the American people can take before we snap.
Right.
So it'll be interesting.
And then on the international level, you have China building a base in Cuba, which is far more dangerous than the missile crisis.
Well,
the media barely touches it. They
built a base in Cuba, and they've also taken over the Panama Canal. So
that would you could thank President Carter for that.
Yeah, but the Chinese have taken over.
No, but I'm saying you could thank Carter for giving it up.
Yeah,
should have
given
given up in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but well, folks, we could go on, but that is going to do it for today. I appreciate you tuning in. Like and share it either on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, wherever you're viewing. And we thank you for tuning in. And as always, God bless, Godspeed, and folks, we will see you next time.